Hello, geometry students. If you're watching this video, you're looking for a challenge. We're going to be looking at the last problem on notes number 164. If you want the complete notes, go to Edpuzzle Circle Products. So with no further ado, let's go to that last problem. We're going to be working on the last problem on these notes, H. And this looks really similar to some of the other problems we did, but there's a key difference, and we'll just see what happens as we go along and do this. So remember, when I'm doing this, I'm going to label this the vertex. And then I have A and O and I and E. So that just label those so that I can spell Bavo Vive. So BA, that would be X. BO would be X plus 20. BI would be 4. BE would be 4 plus 7, which is 11. So now I'm going to just go ahead and solve this by distributing. So I have x squared plus 20x equals 44. Now this is the place where we kind of notice that something is a little different than before. Before, I could just take the square root of both sides to get rid of my x squared, but this term messes that up. I can't just square root this because that's going to mess this up. So what I have to do is I have to solve this as a quadratic equation. And if we remember the steps for solving a quadratic equation, is we're going to try to factor this thing, or we could use the quadratic formula, but today we're just going to look at factoring. So I'm going to subtract 44 from both sides. And what that does is it makes the right-hand side equals 0. That 0 is very important for us. X squared minus 20x minus 44 equals 0. Now what that 0 does for us is that I'm going to turn this into a product, and when I have two things that multiply together to give me 0, then I can say, well, A equals 0 or B equals 0. I basically know that one of the factors is 0, or both of them. So that's how I'm going to solve this. I'm going to try to factor this into two factors that equals 0. And that's the key here for this problem. To do that, to factor this, I'm going to use what's called the ninja star method. And I'll just review that right here. So the ninja star method, I make an X and then one more line through here. Okay, so the ninja star method, I'm going to put the first term times the last term at the top. So we call that A times C. And then the middle term I'm going to put at the bottom, we call that B. This A, B, and C stuff comes from the general form of the quadratic formula, which looks like this. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So this is called the leading coefficient, the first one. In this case, that's just a 1. The b part is the x coefficient, and this is 20. And c represents this constant term, which is negative 44 in this case. So that's how you'd split this up. Notice the x squared goes away, and the x's are just kind of split between these two different factors. Now what we want to do is solve it for this particular problem. So I just multiply my a and my c together. That's negative 44 times 1 is just negative 44. And the middle term b is 20. And then I put my ax over here, which is just 1x. I could write x, and 1x over here, it's just x. So now I try to think of a number. When I multiply together, I get negative 44, and add together to get 20. So I need two numbers that do that. And the best way to do that is look at the factors of negative 44. Now I'll just look at the positive factors, like 1 times 44, 2 times 22, and 4 times 11. Those are the only ways to do it. Sometimes you don't have to list them out. You can just think of it. What's two numbers that's going to give me my 20 when I add them together? And this comes the closest. But notice that if the 2 was negative, then they would add to a positive 20. And since one of these has to be a negative to have a product that's negative 44, that works just fine. So it's negative 2, 22 are my two numbers that I want. All right, now that's the hard part of the Ninja Star. The cool part is that these things give us our two factors that we're looking for. And this is just x minus 2. That's one of our factors. X minus 2 is one of our factors. X minus 22 is our other, or plus 22 is our other factor. Just keep the sign. Now, I know from the zero product property that one of these factors, or both of them, have to be 0. So x minus 2 equals 0 would make this one 0, which means that this equation would be solved. Or I could say x plus 22 could equal 0, and that would make this term 0, which would solve our equation as well. So we have two equations now we can solve for x. So we add 2 to both sides to this one. We get x equals 2. We subtract 22 from this one on both sides, and we get x equals negative 22. So that gives us two solutions. I could plug them into this equation to verify that it solves it, or I could plug it into here and just rework this and see if that's going to work for me. That would probably be a little easier. But what I want to do is choose one of these for x. Notice it's negative 22 is not going to work for x because x is a distance, has to be positive. So let's just cross that one out. Let's use this one. And like I said, if I wanted to solve this, if this is 2, if I wanted to check this, I could say, well, that's 2 times 2 plus 22, which is 22. If 2 plus 20 is 22, and that should equal 4 times 11. 4 times 11. And we might notice that that just works okay. And so that's just a check to see if our answer worked. And it does. So x equals 2 is the solution of this. So just a quick review. We got a quadratic equation, an x squared and another x term that didn't go away. We have to factor that. So we set it equal to 0, and we find the two factors, set each of those equal to 0, and we find our solutions. Determine which one is going to work in our problem, and that's how we finish up this problem. All right, have a great day. We'll talk to you next time.